Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Before we begin, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more stories like this. I was born into a family where comparisons were the language of love. From as far back as I can remember, my parents adored my younger sister, Clarissa, while I was treated like the shadow in the corner of every room. If Clarissa drew a stick figure, it was celebrated like Picasso himself had reincarnated. If I aced a math test, it was brushed aside as, well, that's expected from you. I learned early that no matter how hard I tried, I could never win the kind of affection Clarissa received without effort. But instead of breaking me, those shadows pushed me toward ambition. I threw myself into books, puzzles, and later computers. Technology became my refuge. While Clarissa floated through life on charm and favoritism, I found purpose in dismantling old gadgets, coding my first clumsy programs, and dreaming of a world I could build with my own two hands. My father would shake his head and say, "Alina, no man will ever marry a girl buried in wires." But to me, every line of code felt like a pathway to freedom. College was brutal. I had no financial cushion, no one slipping me money under the table the way they did for Clarissa. While she studied fashion design in Europe, funded entirely by our parents, I worked 3 part-time jobs in San Diego just to pay tuition. Some nights, I ate ramen noodles until my stomach ached, staying awake until dawn in the computer lab, debugging endless loops of code. But the struggle became my fuel. By the time I graduated, I had built a prototype of an AI system designed to sync human thought patterns with digital commands. That prototype was the seed that would grow into Neuralink. I didn't start out with billions. I started out with rejection letters. Venture capitalists laughed in my face. They said, "You're too young, too female, too naive." But I kept refining, building, and pitching. And then one investor finally saw what the others didn't: potential. Within 3 years, Neuralink became the name on everyone's lips. Our breakthrough software helped paralyzed patients communicate through thought-to-text interfaces. It wasn't just profitable, it was life-changing. Awards followed, magazines splashed my face across covers, and the day Forbes called me the woman shaping the future of AI. I thought of every night I went hungry in college. I had done it. But success came with its shadows too. People who had once dismissed me suddenly wanted a piece of me. Among them was Marcus. Tall, charming, with that disarming smile that made me feel seen for the first time. He wasn't just a venture capitalist, he was magnetic. At least, that's what I told myself. He attended one of my conferences, praised my vision, and within months, we were inseparable. I thought I had found someone who loved me for who I was, not just what I built. When I introduced him to my family, Clarissa's eyes lingered on him too long. I noticed but brushed it off as paranoia. She was always flirtatious, always seeking validation, but I trusted Marcus. I told myself, this is different. He chose me. What I didn't know then was that this introduction would plant the seed of the deepest betrayal of my life. The turning point came after I sold Neuralink for just over $1 billion. It should have been the happiest day of my life. I was 34, a self-made billionaire. Proof that determination could silence the doubts of an entire world. Yet as I signed the sale agreement, I noticed Marcus's smile looked too wide, his excitement too polished. And Clarissa, who had been distant for years, suddenly reappeared with sugary affection, visiting my mansion, complimenting my clothes, acting like we had always been close. It started with whispers in the night. Marcus would step out to take calls in hushed tones. Clarissa would show up unannounced, spending more time in my house than in her own apartment. I dismissed the oddities, convincing myself they loved me. But small cracks widened into gaping holes. I caught them exchanging glances at dinner, glances that lasted a heartbeat too long. I heard laughter from the garden one evening, only to find them standing close, too close, as though I had walked into a scene I wasn't meant to see. My instincts screamed, but love can be a dangerous drug. For months, I buried my suspicions, telling myself I was imagining things. Until one night, unable to sleep, I stumbled across a message on Marcus's phone. It was from Clarissa. 3 words that shattered me. When she's gone. I felt my blood freeze. Gone. Gone where? My mind spiraled. That night I didn't confront them. I smiled at Marcus, kissed his cheek, and pretended to sleep while my heart thudded against my ribs. The next morning I contacted a private investigator. If they thought I was blind, I would make them regret it. The investigator's reports confirmed what my gut already knew. They were lovers. And worse, they were planning to get rid of me. Not just divorce me, not just humiliate me, kill me. Clarissa's greed was as bottomless as the ocean, and Marcus's charm was nothing but a mask for ambition. Together, they had mapped out a plan to make me disappear, staging it as an accident on an upcoming yacht trip Marcus had been so insistent on. I stared at the hidden camera footage in disbelief. Clarissa, my own sister, sipping wine on my balcony, whispering, "She'll never see it coming." Marcus replied, "The ocean takes what it wants. We'll say she slipped." My billion-dollar rise had painted a target on my back. The very people I trusted most had become predators circling their prey. But they underestimated me. They thought I was still the overlooked daughter, the gullible wife. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The day of the yacht trip arrived like a storm disguised as sunshine. Marcus kissed my forehead that morning, his lips soft but cold, like the touch of a stranger. Clarissa pranced onto the deck in a white sundress that fluttered in the sea breeze, looking every bit the picture of innocence. I smiled back at them, but inside I was steel. They thought they were leading me to my grave, but I had already laid out my plan. I had swallowed the truth in silence for weeks, memorizing their whispers and collecting evidence through hidden cameras. I had backups stored in encrypted drives, copies sent to a lawyer I trusted in the city. But on that yacht, I didn't need to confront them with words I needed to survive. They poured my drink with exaggerated cheer, Marcus raising his glass to toast, to a beautiful future. I pretended to sip. The liquid burned faintly on my lips, the telltale sign of a sedative. My heart thundered in my chest, but I tilted my head back and let them believe I was drinking. Within half an hour I feigned drowsiness, slumping against the lounge chair as the waves rocked beneath us. "Is it working?" Clarissa's voice sliced through the salt-laced air. "Yes," Marcus whispered. "Give it time. When she's out, we do it." I let my eyelids flutter shut, breathing slowly, playing dead before they had even laid a hand on me. Soon enough, I felt their shadows loom over me. "She doesn't deserve this much money," Clarissa hissed. "She never shared anything. Always selfish, always acting superior." Marcus's reply was ice. "Stop justifying it. We're too deep now." Their hands lifted me, dragging me toward the railing. I let my body hang limp, every instinct screaming to fight, but I knew the ocean would give me my chance. And then with a final shove, they sent me tumbling into the dark, endless Pacific. The shock of the water stole my breath. It was colder than knives, heavier than stone. Salt rushed into my nose and throat, choking me as I kicked, my arms flailing against the pull of the sea. Above me, the yacht drifted farther away, its lights shrinking until it was only a memory. For a terrifying moment, I wondered if this was how it would end. Betrayed by my sister, murdered by my husband, swallowed by the ocean like I was nothing. But I was not nothing. I was Alina, and I had built an empire from nothing. I would not die like this. I forced my body to move, letting years of swimming lessons as a teenager carry me forward. I reached for the small GPS beacon strapped beneath my clothes, pressing the activation switch with trembling fingers. The tiny device blinked red in the night, sending out a signal that could mean the difference between life and death. Hours blurred into one another as I floated, waves tossing me like a rag doll. My muscles burned, my lips cracked with salt, but I clung to the thought of survival. Just before dawn, the faint hum of an engine reached my ears. A fishing boat loomed out of the mist, its light slicing through the gray horizon. "Over here," I croaked, my voice breaking. The fishermen pulled me aboard, their hands rough but kind, their eyes wide at the sight of a half-drowned woman in torn clothes. They gave me water, wrapped me in blankets, and ferried me back to shore. To them, I was a nameless victim of the sea. To me, it was a rebirth. News of my disappearance spread quickly. By the time I reached the safety of a quiet motel under a false identity, I saw headlines announcing my presumed death. Billionaire heiress lost at sea. Marcus and Clarissa played their parts perfectly, mourning in public, holding hands at memorial services, speaking to reporters about how much they loved me, watching them on television, crocodile tears glistening in their eyes. I felt a rage so pure it burned away any remaining trace of sorrow. I couldn't walk back into my life immediately. If I wanted justice, I needed patience. So I buried Alina Winters and resurrected her under her maiden name, Alina Cortez. With the help of Harper, my loyal assistant and friend, I began to weave the threads of my revenge. Harper cried when she saw me alive, pulling me into her arms with a strength that steadied me. "They think you're gone," she whispered. "That gives us the upper hand." We worked in silence, nights blending into mornings as we pieced together the puzzle. The private investigator's footage, the secret bank transfers Marcus had orchestrated, the coded messages between him and Clarissa, it was all there. We just needed to gather it, frame it, and time it perfectly. I rented a small apartment under my new name, blending into the city like a ghost. The walls were bare, the bed was thin, but for the first time, I felt safe. No one knew where I was, not even my family beyond Harper. I became a shadow in the world I once dominated. Marcus and Clarissa, meanwhile, wasted no time enjoying what they thought was theirs. They threw lavish parties in my mansion, paraded around in designer clothes, and flaunted the illusion of power. But every reckless step they took left a trail. A hidden wire transfer to an offshore account. A whispered phone call Harper intercepted. A document signed under false pretenses. Piece by piece, their empire of lies crumbled into my hands. Months passed. My grief hardened into determination. The world believed I was dead, but I wasn't just alive, I was preparing. I studied every angle, every loophole, every way they could wriggle out of justice. And I sealed it shut. The night I finally looked in the mirror and whispered, "It's time," I no longer saw the broken woman who had been pushed into the sea. I saw the architect of their downfall. And when I returned, I would not come back as a victim. I would come back as the reckoning they never saw coming. The first time I stepped back onto the grounds of my mansion after months in hiding, my chest tightened as though the air itself was charged with electricity. The driveway, once filled with my cars, was now lined with ones Marcus and Clarissa had flaunted with shameless arrogance. Luxury vehicles, dripping with money they had no right to touch, glittered in the sun. I stood at the gates disguised in plain clothes, my cap pulled low, and thought, tonight, I stop being a ghost. Tonight, they see what survival looks like. Inside, they were already celebrating. I had chosen my moment well. A party thundered in the ballroom, music vibrating against the windows, laughter spilling out like smoke. Marcus and Clarissa thrived on spectacle, and this night was no different. She wore a sequin dress that clung to her frame, her face painted with pride, while he played the host, swirling a glass of champagne as though he had never known grief. I walked through the door with the quiet confidence of someone carrying the truth like a blade. The guard I had hired for this night, a man loyal only because of the thick envelope I had handed him, nodded me inside without question. My heart beat steady, not with fear but with fire. I didn't announce myself immediately. I waited until the room had swelled with applause at something Marcus boasted, until Clarissa's laughter rang high and false. Then I stepped forward, letting the lights hit me. The room froze. Glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the marble floor. Clarissa's face drained of color, her lips parting but no words escaping. Marcus stumbled back a step, his glass trembling in his grip. "Surprise," I said softly, my voice slicing through the silence. "Did you miss me?" Clarissa's scream tore through the air. "You're supposed to be dead." Marcus's jaw clenched but his mask of charm cracked. "This isn't possible." "Oh, it's very possible," I replied, walking toward them slowly, deliberately. "The ocean doesn't take everyone. Some of us swim back." They tried to recover, stammering excuses, claiming relief that I was alive. But I raised a small remote in my hand, pressing the button that activated the projector I had prepared. One by one, images filled the walls of the ballroom. Hidden camera footage. Whispered recordings. Bank transfers. Documents signed with Marcus's name. Clarissa's voice caught plotting. The room gasped with every revelation. "Look closely, everyone," I said, turning to the crowd of guests, business associates and so-called friends. "This is what betrayal looks like. My husband and my sister are planning to kill me. to steal everything I built with my blood and bones. Clarissa lunged forward, her voice shrill. She's lying. She doctored it. But the next clip silenced her. Her own face, grainy but clear, whispering to Marcus, she'll never see it coming. The guests recoiled, murmuring in disgust. Marcus's facade collapsed completely, his face twisting into something feral. You don't understand, this was all for us. For our future. Our future. I laughed, a sharp sound that echoed against the walls. You mean your greed? Your hunger for something you could never create. You thought you could erase me. But I am not so easily erased. By the time the police arrived, summoned in advance with the evidence I had already provided, they found Marcus and Clarissa cornered. Their lies shredded by the truth played out in front of dozens of witnesses. Clarissa clawed at my arm, tears streaming, begging, "Please, Alina, we're family, forgive me." But I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but the spoiled child who had grown into a woman willing to kill her sister for money. You stopped being my family the moment you tried to drown me, I told her coldly. The trials dragged on for months, but the outcome was inevitable. Marcus received 30 years for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. Clarissa received 18. Watching them led away in handcuffs was not sweet, it was bitter, but necessary. Justice rarely tastes like honey. Afterward, I rebuilt not just my fortune, but myself. I poured my energy into the Phoenix Trust, a foundation for victims of financial betrayal and manipulation. I invested in startups led by women, by people of color, by dreamers who reminded me of who I once was. I wrote my story, titled after the fall, Rebuilding When Your Foundation Crumbles, not as a tale of revenge, but of resilience. Yet there were moments that lingered, ghosts that whispered in the quiet. One day I visited Clarissa in prison. She sat across the glass, her face pale, her eyes hollow. "Do you hate me?" she asked, her voice shaking. I paused. "No. Hate is too small a word for what you tried to do. But I will never forgive you either. You made your choice. Now you live with it." Her tears slid down, but I felt nothing. I walked away without looking back. Months later, I returned to the spot where Marcus and Clarissa had shoved me into the sea. I carried roses in my arms, red like the fire of my survival. One by one I scattered them into the waves. The ocean had tried to claim me, but I had risen. I stood there as the wind whipped my hair, whispering to myself, "This is not where I died. This is where I began again." My story is not about wealth or betrayal. It is about survival. About how even when the people closest to you turn into knives at your back, you can still rise, rebuild, and reclaim your life. And to you watching, I leave this. Never let betrayal define you. Never let greed consume you. And never, ever underestimate your own power to come back stronger.
Moral lesson.
Life is fragile, and trust can be the sharpest blade or the softest shield. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. It often comes from those we let closest to our hearts. But betrayal is not the end. It is the beginning of a choice, to drown in bitterness or to rise in strength. I chose to rise. Survival is not just about breathing, it is about reclaiming your dignity, your peace, and your future. Justice is not always immediate, but when it comes, it restores balance. And healing is not forgetting the pain. It is transforming it into power. If you have been wronged, remember, you are not broken. You are becoming. What feels like the end of your story may just be the first chapter of your triumph. Stand tall, rebuild, and let your scars speak of your strength. Hello guys, if you've stayed with me through this journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What lesson spoke to you most? Together we can turn pain into purpose.